Hi, welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I'm going to explain how to create the braided hair that I did on a portrait. I hope that you will enjoy the information, so let's get to work. As you can see, I have some guidelines in place that help define the major sections of hair. I'm starting with the stray clump of bangs on the forehead. I begin by burning a dark line along the right edge of the clump, and then I start filling in the clump using a combination of pullaway and uniform strokes. Rotate the board and burn a line along the left edge of the clump. Well, now it's on the right side of the screen. Afterwards, fill in the clump of hair so that it is mostly uniform in color. Now I'm using the flat of the shader to reburn a few of the guidelines. I'm burning the lines fairly thick. Afterwards, fill in the next clump with uniform color, again using the flat of the shader. With this other little stray clump of hairs, use the flat of the shader to burn it in. Then burn in the small clump below it. I like to work on one clump at a time, and I mostly use the flat of the shader to get wider burn strokes that follow the direction the hair is hanging. Make sure to keep your pen tip in optimal position when burning along the edges, rotating the board if needed while you work. As I said before, I work one section at a time, and I find it's helpful to burn along the edges of the section and then fill it in. Generally speaking, the front edge of each section is darker than the back edge. The front edge is the side that is closest to the face. Looking at the reference photo reveals that the hair is darker along the roots where the hair parts. The hair gets lighter along the outer edges. When burning in this section, use pullaway strokes that start at the root and then pull them towards the outer edge. It is important to keep some tonal variety in your burn strokes. The tonal variety is what creates the impression of hair. And notice how I am using the flat of my shader to create wide burn strokes. As you work, be mindful of where the light is striking the hair. Break down the hair into smaller sections to work on. With the crown, I broke the hair down into 6 sections. I used the dark streaks or bands that are found in the hair as the dividing lines between the sections. Yellow lines on the inset reference photo mark the sections that I created. With the bangs, I burn in a few of the darker streaks to give the hair shape and break it down. Then I use pullaway strokes to color in the bangs, making sure to include tonal variation in the burn strokes. When I rotate the board, most of the time it is done to keep the pen tip in optimal position. But there are numerous times when I do it because it allows me to burn curves using the natural arc of my hand movement. Since I'm left-handed, my natural arc is curving to the right. A right-handed person would have the opposite arc, so their hand would curve towards the left. There is a group of curving hairs that are sitting on top of the bangs. As I burn in the bangs, I am careful to avoid burning over this little curving clump of hair. Now, it might be helpful to mark the curving clump with white charcoal. It'll make it easier to see, and the charcoal will help resist the heat of the pen tip. If the hair doesn't have any obvious ways to break it down into smaller sections, then I like to fill the area with lots of pullaway strokes that follow the direction the hair is hanging. Just make sure to keep tonal variation in your burn strokes, because a uniformly colored clump of hair will not look very realistic. As you can see, I purposely ignored or covered up the areas where the scalp was showing. My sole reason for this was to make it easier for me. I didn't want to hassle with trying to make the area look like scalp versus a highlight or reflection on the hair. Another thing that I purposely ignored was the happy birthday headband that the little girl was wearing. I felt that it was distracting to the image, and I did not want to attempt burning it in. As I finish up the crown or the top of the head, pay attention to how I work in sections, filling the area with numerous pull-away strokes. A lot of times I block in the areas to give them a base color. Then I reburn to define this section and increase its darkness level. As I reburn, I am concentrating a lot of the burn strokes along the ends of the hair section. The ends are where, generally speaking, the hair curves or tucks under other hair sections. As you can see, I don't always finish a section before starting a new one. Bouncing around the artwork is how I normally do things, unless I'm working on a project that I plan from the beginning for it to be a tutorial. Now, if you prefer to get one section completely done before moving on to a new one, that's okay. There is no absolute wrong or right way to do this. Instead, it is about finding what works best for you. Another thing you might have noticed is that I am not replicating the hair exactly as the photo shows it. Instead, I'm covering the major features, but I'm allowing myself the freedom to ignore the frizzy hairs sticking out here and there, and to add more highlights to the hair. As I finish with the lower part of the braid, you'll see that I carefully avoid the little cluster of curling hair. I burn up to that little curl, I skip over it, and then resume burning. The curl needs to be lighter than the surrounding hair to help it stand out. Despite being careful, accidents happen, so I use the edge of an X-Acto knife to remove the overburns from the little curl. I mentioned before that you need to pay attention to where the light is striking the hair. With this photo, the light is coming from above, so the further down the braid I work, the darker it becomes. Let's recap the guidelines for burning in the braided hair. First, break it down into smaller sections. Second, burn sections individually. Third, use the flat of the shader to create thick lines or bands of color. Fourth, keep tonal variety in your burn strokes. Uniformly colored hair will not look realistic. Fifth, burn in the direction the hair drapes. Sixth, pay attention to the light. Hair closer to the light source will be paler than hair further away. Seventh, generally speaking, the front edge of each hair section will be lighter than the back edge. Now, for some sections on the braid, the front edge would be the top edge, and the back the bottom edge. Eighth, rotate the board as needed to burn curves in the direction of your natural hand arc or movement. This can make it much easier to burn curved lines. At this point, I've got the basic sections of the hair blocked in, and now it is time to reburn and darken them up. As I reburn, I am using pull-away strokes just like I have for the majority of the hair. If I'm not using pull-away strokes, then I'm using uniform strokes. The only difference between the two is that uniform strokes are uniform in color for the entire burn, whereas pull-away strokes start darker than they end. It is very important to keep tonal variety in the burn strokes, and to use the flat of the shader so that you get really thick burn lines or bands of color. The hair is not created by burning lots and lots and lots of really thin lines. Well, I cannot think of any other useful information to tell you, so I'm going to quit talking, and from now until the conclusion, you'll get to listen to Todd's guitar playing. See you at the end of the video. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope I provided some useful information that you can use in your own projects. On my website, Pyrography Made Easy, I have a number of free tutorials along with patterns that you can download at no cost to you. Feel free to check it out anytime. Well, thank you for watching my video, and I will see you next week.